All right. The hiatus is broken. We are back here on the Football Lounge with Mark and Dan. Happy Fat Tuesday, everybody. I got my king cake baby Mardi Gras beads ready to go, fired up. Well, we have a lot to catch up on, obviously. Anytime we're gone for 2 weeks, but that was still a good 2 week period to take a quick breather here before we get into the off season, because it's nothing earth shattering, but we do have a lot of news to get to here in this episode, Mark. And I know that you've got a list of quarterbacks, draft prospects that you have comps for. That's always a fun, interesting conversation. So I'm looking forward to diving into that. But
yeah,
go for it.
That stemmed from my the first week after the Super Bowl. We both were like, all right, let's do a recap episode after the Super Bowl. Then let's take a break. And around Friday of last week, I was getting that itch, and I'm like, and I'm just like, okay, I need to watch football. So Monday, no, it was really over the weekend, I just started binging highlight tape of every quarterback's name who's being even talked about being drafted. Because obviously you've seen some, Will Howard, if you watch Ohio State, you've seen some Cam Ward, you've seen obviously some Shador stuff because they're the big names. But I was just like, all right, I'm going to watch the highlights of all these dudes, the lowlights of all these dudes, and just my gut feeling on it. So that's kind of what I regurgitated. And we'll have a little fun with kind of starting that conversation about these quarterbacks, which in a month from now, we'll have a little more clear picture of kind of how the draft is going to start shaking out. And maybe what franchises maybe your own Steelers will be looking for once maybe in possibly drafting a quarterback. So we'll have a little fun and start getting those names in our mouths, because you're going to have to start talking about Cam Ward. We're going to have to start talking about Shador Sanders and have a baseline for our listeners of kind of our thoughts on these guys.
Yeah, I mean, the combine is done and there's still so much more left to go. We got the pro days. We obviously have the draft coming up late April, but before that, we have the new league year, which starts March 12th, the tampering period a couple days before that. And then we've got that free agency frenzy that always happens for about a week or two into late March. So exciting to launch ourselves into that. While you were watching tape of the quarterbacks, I was scouring tape of every Starbucks security camera system to see if I could catch any more shade being thrown between NFL reporters.
Hey,
what a fun time to be alive when that is breaking news in the middle of the NFL Combine, that Mr. Ian Rappaport is getting verbally accosted by another NFL reporter, Jordan Schultz, over basically a report that Jordan put out that Ian Rappaport basically rebutted or refuted just a few moments later with his own report. So I thought that story was hilarious, and I thought that would be kind of a fitting, jump start into this episode for us here.
Listen, I didn't know that Jordan Schultz was kind of a spoon in the mouth Nepo kid. From what I was reading, it kind of opened up eyes, oh no, he comes from some real wealth or something. And so I think there's a little bit of this kind of this guy just does this because he doesn't have to do anything else. Rappaport is one of those guys that I've always trusted. I've always liked Rappaport.
Yeah, I like him a lot.
And I think he's one of those guys who's connected. Now, he's NFL Network. Am I right?
Yes.
So you always have to take those guys, what they say, with a grain of salt, because their paychecks literally come from the league. But when you're talking about someone who's this
dialed in.
And the dispute they're talking about is Brady and Stafford, and this kind of, did they officially meet? Was there tampering? Was there not? Was it just a bump in the mountain resort? Or was
I mean, Jordan's report was that they met together at a ski resort in Montana on purpose.
Yes.
Obviously, that's a no-no because Tom Brady's an owner of the Vegas Raiders,
but
it's a no-no in terms of if it was a formal meetup to discuss
but it
acquisitions.
But I thought it wasn't, because the Rams had given the agent the green light to figure out what kind of contracts were out there. And now we're learning that Stafford resigned. that the Giants did make a formal offer, and the Raiders also made a formal offer. So
yeah, but you can't. There's certain things with not being able to. There's still certain ways that you can have the conversations.
without like
If this was
vacationing together.
a non-sanctioned meeting,
Gotcha.
that
Okay.
wasn't set up. But regardless, Ian Rappaport was basically saying, look, they ran into each other at a ski resort because they're rich guys and they run into each other at ski resorts. That's kind of what happens. And they say, hey, and Jordan Schultz was like, I've got a bridge to sell you if you think that they both met at some random ski resort in Montana. And then the best, kind of mic drop moment was when Ian Rappaport said, for those wondering, Tom Brady and Matt Stafford both own properties at that ski resort.
Yeah.
Hence the reason why maybe they would be attending the same ski resort.
From what it sounds like, and I know the Pardon My Take guys broke this down too, so I heard it from there, also from Rappaport's reporting. It's like it's one of those places to even be in that location, you have to own a home there, and the home alone is like multiple millions of dollars, and
Sure.
and so it's one of those. It's where the rich and famous go to escape and be around other rich and famous people, and not have to worry about their photos being taken and things like that. So,
Gotcha.
I'll say this: it's hilarious because what they do is such an unserious job, and for Jordan Schultz to get butt hurt, like if you stand by your reporting, just stand by your reporting. But for you to go at Ian Rappaport, who's like 5'0" in a Starbucks, and reportedly basically say like, "I'll fuck you up if you want to go
in the most public place that you could think of."
When you're, especially the combine, when it's like, dude, you're supposed to be there, also just working. It's not, I'll just say this: I wasn't like I think I follow Schultz, but I wasn't like a Schultz guy. But this certainly made me like way less of a Schultz guy after hearing all this.
Yeah. No, it was bizarre, but it's kind of funny. Obviously, the combine always, gives us something to talk about. We just didn't think it was going to be away from the field at Lucas Oil Stadium. That's for sure. Real quick too, we've got obviously like some player news to get into. There was also kind of a blunder of a report from Front Office Sports. They're usually pretty good, but I guess I don't know them terribly well. But they reported that Hard Knocks was basically moving away from the NFL entirely because of what happened with the Giants, and that they were going to be covering Bill Belichick and the UNC program. But then the report, they basically rebutted their own report a day or two ago, basically saying that, oh yeah, talks actually fell through in the last minute. The question I have about this, Mar, I haven't read too much about the story in general. On its face, it makes a lot of sense. The Giants got embarrassed. They're probably like, the NFL in general and the NFL owners probably like, we can't have that happen to us. So either give us so basically my take is it's either going to stay in the NFL, and it's going to be even worse than it has been in recent years, where it's just the most watered down, the most highly edited version of the show possible, or the NFL really is going to pivot and go somewhere else. But I thought the NFL gets to decide, not the NFL teams, because their report was basically no NFL team wanted to do it. So the NFL was like, okay, we'll go to the college ranks. I thought the NFL basically forces these teams to do it. So I'm a little bit confused by that. I get like no NFL team, a lot of NFL teams aren't going to want to do it. So
I think for the first time in a long time, the NFL's probably taking this a little bit like, okay, is this actually good for our brand and for the league anymore?
Yeah.
It was really cool, but is it now? Because really what you did is you let the curtain be peeled peeked behind so much to where you have an owner very influential in the Mara family that is basically like, this is bullshit. Like, it's bullshit. We let Saquon go to Philadelphia and we made that mistake. But the fact that we get reamed for it every week when Saquon he runs for a touchdown, that clip comes back up. There's a point where it's almost like this isn't good for the NFL anymore. I think if the NFL was smart in the offseason Hard Knocks, they would just follow a coach or a coaching staff it'd be really interesting right now if they were filming with Sirianni being like, how do you come down from a Super Bowl? How do you rebuild your staff when you lost an offensive coordinator, offensive line coach, and all these pieces? And let's just follow a coaching staff and like something really niche, right? or
Yeah.
let's
But
follow
the greater
kind of
audience, the kids, all the other people that appeal to the larger, broader NFL fan
yeah.
base probably wouldn't care about that at all. Granted, I
No.
don't think they probably would have cared about the offseason Hard Knocks in the first place.
Well, and
So
that's just the
you're
thing is
probably,
so
yeah. I mean,
I
yeah,
think they should go back to the table with it, and I think they should go look at like the success that the NFL, I mean that Netflix had with their quarterback thing. If you did an off-season quarterback or an off-season player profile thing, I think there's guys who would sign up for that because right, it's off-season. Guys are talking so much on podcasts and things like that.
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't think I don't think they're
That would make a
afraid.
lot more sense.
I don't think they're afraid to get got anymore, but I do think like front offices owners are now very much like we're done. We're not letting that happen to us, and that's definitely a problem for the NFL. We'll see what comes of it
Yeah.
for sure.
I mean, and from an appeal standpoint, it's just it really hasn't been good for quite a while. The in-season one I thought was really good, and that's because we had real football to dive into. Tons of game
Yeah,
footage, meetings during the week, legit practice, the starters you get to
recovery
see.
guys, the
Um,
recovery and how they
yeah,
get from there was good
just more of
clips
the
and stuff.
players because the bad teams are getting featured on Hard Knocks. That's how it's always been. And a lot of times many of the bad teams don't have, transcendent superstars
Yeah,
that everybody else knows. So I think if they continue with the in-season one, they can kind of do whatever they want before the season.
for
All
sure.
right, let's get into some news. The Eagles inked Saquon Barkley to a massive, I mean, it's only a 2-year deal, but a massive $41.2 million, making him the highest paid running back in NFL history at $20 million per year. Obviously, this comes after a great season, a nearly record-breaking one, nearly joining the 2000 club, wins the Super Bowl, all of that stuff. Philadelphia made the right move here, right? Despite the high cost for a position that many said, wasn't worth it.
Well, he did hit the 2000 club. I will say this:
Oh, yeah. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's my
I
bad.
wasn't
I didn't break the
expecting.
record, but yeah.
I wasn't expecting this at all. So when the news came across, I was surprised.
It wasn't on my radar.
But I think it's what Philadelphia is showing the rest of the league as they're trying to get a Myles Garrett, as they're trying to go into free agency and be aggressive and hope maybe guys take a hometown discount or something like that, come to a winning program, is that, dude, we'll take care of you. Like, we just signed Saquon last year, but he overperformed the contract we gave him, which was a great running back contract by and large, and we just rewarded him. And also, I think it makes sense too, because basically what the Eagles are saying right now is we think the window with this current version of the Eagles is 2 more years. So let's go all in on this 2 years. Let's keep everyone happy. And then let's also, because we've nailed so many young draft picks, we don't have to pay a lot of other guys. You saw they let go of Darius Slay and their other corner.
And
it's
James
because,
Bradbury.
yes,
Yeah.
because they're nailing draft picks. Hy Roseman has been utterly fantastic the last 3 drafts. So smart and good, well-run franchises could do this. I also think it sends a really good message for players going into free agency. Philadelphia will take care of you if you take care of business in Philadelphia. And that's a great message to send.
And according to Over the Cap, they still have roughly $20 million of money. So why not spend it? Why not spend that money on the superstar that helped get you to where you got in this
Absolutely.
situation? It's a no-brainer. It makes a lot of sense. So, yeah, the Eagles stay good, at least for the time being. We'll see what happens with the release of those 2 cornerbacks, where they end up and how the Eagles address it. But obviously they have tons of capital and some draft capital there to work with too. The Jets today released Devontae Adams. This was a move that we kind of saw coming. He was owed a lot of money, and that wasn't ever going to happen. So it was kind of a 1-year rental from that perspective for them, or less than a year. This coincides with them obviously saying, we don't want you, Aaron Rodgers. Go elsewhere. So kind of we'll see what happens with the 2 of them. But overall, this wasn't unexpected news, but more so noteworthy that it did officially happen. And we'll see where he lands. I think, at this point, Devontae, despite having that relationship with Aaron, might want to play somewhere completely different from what Aaron wants to do. And so I'm not so sold that they are going to end up in the same spot, but we also wouldn't be surprised if they did.
No, my gut reaction is just wait. He'll wait to see where Aaron goes. He's in no hurry. I think he'll have plenty of options. I think he's still a productive receiver
Yeah,
in this league. I don't know if
definitely.
he's a number one anymore, but I think if you have, if you're
I
a
would put
team,
him top 32 in the league right now still.
oh yeah, but if you're a team like
Yeah.
Baltimore, or you're a team that hey, like we already have Zay Flowers, who's kind of our untraditional one, and you want a big frame possession guy, I think it makes a ton of sense. So I think he'll absolutely find a place, probably on a 1-year deal. I think my gut says it'll be wherever Aaron goes, but it certainly may not, depending on the situation at hand. I think a lot of teams who are interested in Aaron might say, listen, Aaron, we are interested in you, but we're not interested in you bringing Devontae, mainly because then it looks like you're running the show. We need to have the control, right? Like we're not, we'll understand if you want Devontae, but it doesn't mean we're going to actually do it, because the Jets, I think one of the things that just optically looked so bad for them last year was it just felt like Aaron was running the show. And that is really not good, especially when you're not performing and you're not winning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that is a good point. But hey, Alan Lazard was also released. So look, that team I say,
The
look, we don't
trio is
want
ready.
Devontae Adams. We want to bring us Lazard. Let's go. The Rams, despite a lot of talk about, hey, we're gonna let him talk to potentially some other teams and we're gonna see kind of where this goes. Ultimately, it made the most sense for the LA Rams to lock up Stafford and stay with the window that they've got. It never made sense to me that they would have traded him or let him leave, unless the package back was just going to be so undeniable that you just got to take it. But it's a marriage that's worked. It's yielded a Super Bowl for them, and he played really well. They were a playoff team last year. They're young. They're a roster that can still win now, Mark. So to me, this made the perfect sense to
The
just
team,
lock him up again.
yeah, the team that came the closest to
Restructure and get
beating
it
the
done.
Eagles in the playoffs was the Rams, and they
Yeah,
did it outdoors in the snow. So the Rams are a very impressive team, and they're building towards something I think very impressive with that young defense. I think there's a couple layers to the story. Number one, Stafford was criminally underpaid at this point in time, if you look at quarterback salaries. So I think he looked at it and said, listen, I think I have a little bit of leverage here, and I'm going to try to use it. And he did. Number two, I think the Rams knew all along we're going to get something done. But if the worst case scenario is some team wants to be stupid and offer multiple high picks for Matt Stafford, we'll also look at this and go, fuck it, sure, let's do it. You know what I mean? Because
yeah,
he is
definitely.
38 and he has been injury prone as of late. So I think it was a win-win for the Rams. I think it was also a win-win for Stafford, because Stafford says, hey, I learned the Giants were interested. I learned that the Raiders were interested. I think their offers were close to what the Rams offered financially. He was basically able to just get a raise for flirting. And I think he also knew that if you really wanted out, hell, Vegas would have been not a bad place to end up, to
Sure.
kind of wind down your career and help them kind of build a stability in Las Vegas. But now he gets to wind down his career with Sean McVay. They don't have to worry about anything this year and next year as far as will he or won't he. He's done. He's locked up. And it wouldn't shock me if like next year the Rams are in on a quarterback. I don't know what their pick situation is this year. If they have a ton of picks, I could see them maybe flirting with a guy in the fourth or fifth round, and maybe Sean McVay gets to kind of see if he could develop someone for a 2-year span. But this is a Rams team that I'm very high on, and I'm pumped for Stafford to just stay there and keep building this team. Right now, if you were to ask me who's the top 3 teams in the NFC, they're in my top 3 teams in the NFC. And I don't think that's a shocker or should be a controversial thing, showing what they did last year overall, what they did late in the season, and the fight that they gave Philadelphia with that young defense.
Yeah, no, I mean, they're definitely a team that's on the up and up, which is scary considering they were already towards the top just 2 years ago. So the ceiling is pretty high for this group. Obviously, Cooper Cup is likely to be on his way. So they're going to have to fill the void for the number 2 wide receiver. Hey, they've got a lot of money. Maybe Devontae Adams is a landing spot. They're back in California. We know that he, wanted to go back home, and he played in Vegas for quite a while and in Oakland. So, I think that could be an interesting spot there for Devontae Adams.
You got to think about Stafford's now been 4 years in Los Angeles. Super Bowl, missed the playoffs, first round exit, playoffs, second round exit. This is a really successful run overall.
Yeah,
I mean,
definitely.
You would like to say that maybe you'd like to sneak in, and if he can sneak into another NFC title game, or if he can find his way to another Super Bowl in the next 2 years, you're going to look at this run that's capping off a Hall of Fame career as a really, really successful run, all things considered. Especially,
and I can't think of too many players that have had. I mean, Tom's the poster child for like having basically 2 separate careers that you could even just say. You could say Tom Brady in his 40s has a Hall of Fame career, right? But like with 2 different teams and a lot of success, like there aren't that many quarterbacks that can say they've had a legitimate resume with 2 different teams, and Stafford's in that group.
Yeah, no, I'm excited for Stafford to have 2 more years and to bookend 6 years in Los Angeles. And when we look back on this in a couple of years, when we're talking about Stafford and maybe in his Hall of Fame eligibility, another NFC title game or another Super Bowl in the really now tough NFC, and he did it in the era of Mahomes and winning a Super Bowl. I think we'll look very fondly on this time, and it'll be one of the main reasons why we're casting our ballots for him in Canton.
Let's get to the first kind of big trade of the offseason. Deebo Samuel is headed to Washington. The Commanders giving a 5th-round pick to the 49ers and picking up the $17 million that Deebo was owed. So that's obviously the big part of that trade compensation package, is that the 49ers get 17 mil off the books. This was actually a little bit of a head scratcher for me from the Commander side, just because I was curious about the fit. Like Curtis Samuel kind of plays, he's obviously not Deebo Samuel, so I understand that, but Curtis Samuel kind of has played that role in terms of the hybrid wide receiver up and down the line type of, then slot specialist type of thing. But I think it works. It's just a lot of money for Washington to pay, in my view, for a team that still did have a lot of areas that they can improve. But at the end of the day, if they've got the salary cap space, which they appear to have quite a bit of, then, hey, why not go get a guy that maybe when healthy can open things up for Terry McLaurin a little bit more and can just give you more options in the run game. So I understand the rationale, but it was at first, I was like, oh, really? Interesting.
I love this. And I'll tell you why. The sophomore slump, it's on. I think this reeks of the same thing the Texans did last year in going and getting Stephon Diggs. And look at us now. And the window's open, like, holy crap, and let's go be aggressive. I think Washington, there's a real come back to Jesus moment with Washington. One of the main things is Jaden definitely took the NFC by storm. He kind of did what Lamar did to the NFC. Lamar's got the historic record against the NFC where it's like he doesn't lose against the NFC. I think Jaden Daniels was a lot. I don't think people really understood what to expect. I think there's a lot of pressure on Washington to be like, okay, that was your fastball. Do you have a changeup? Do you have a splitter? You know what I mean? Do you have that second pitch? And what does that look like? And adding Deebo certainly seems like, oh, here we go. They're going to find that second pitch. But listen, this is a Deebo Samuel that I think will come into the season motivated to prove the doubters. But we know how a lot of that turns out. Listen, would it shock me if Deebo Samuel ends up with 900 yards, 12 touchdowns, plays 15 games, has a healthy year, and helps Washington go to win 12 games again? No, it wouldn't shock me. But I think it's very equally just as likely that Deebo ends up playing 7 games, misses time, It leads to dysfunction because they're going to spend a lot of time this offseason building this new Debo playbook, and they don't have Debo for a lot of it. And then it falls back to, let's just go back to what Jaden does best. And there's now plenty of film on what Jaden does best. And you're going to see a really tough and improved NFC overall not be taken as much by storm. I still think Washington's a playoff team, but I think there's just like Houston. I'm taking what happened with Houston and I'm learning from it. I'm not buying into it. I'm not going to sit here and say Houston's going to the AFC title game like I did last year, like I did with Houston. I'm not going to say Washington NFC title game. I think it makes sense. Makes tons of sense. I also think you're playing with a little bit of fire, and I'm excited to watch it all happen. And as someone who is secretly rooting, not secretly, I'm very outwardly rooting for Caleb to have the incredible year and for Jaden to come back to the means a little bit. I think this, I know it sounds counterintuitive, but I think it helps me in that rooting for it. And I think I'm trying to explain why.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I do like that.
I'm just playing devil's advocate. If you're San Francisco, dude, if you're San Francisco, fuck yeah, dude. I'll take the pick and I don't have to pay him. And now it resets San Francisco a little bit, right? Ayuk was a problem last year. Debo was a problem last year at this time. And then Ayuk's humbled by the injury. He's got his money. And I think they're going to be aggressive in the wide receiver market.
And there's clarity now, a clear lane for Ricky Pearsall to enter that, now you've got to have an increased role here in your sophomore year.
And it wouldn't shock me if they draft another wide receiver or if they're active in the free agent market and they just say, look, now you're paid, Ayuk, but we don't owe you anything. You owe it to us to earn up that contract. You missed last year with an injury. Fine. So now let's go. Let's be aggressive. And for everyone else, it's kind of a fresh start. Kittle is not a complainer. He's a hard work guy. And so I think it's a good thing for San Francisco as far as having a bounce back here to kind of clear that air.
Yeah, no, I am in full agreement with you there. I think that is an outcome that I can absolutely see happening. All right, we'll get to a couple other news and notes before we get to Mark's quarterback comps. Right after this, a quick word from our sponsors.
Transform your body into a canvas of exquisite storytelling and profound self-expression with the skilled hands of Ryan Allison. Craft custom masterpieces that tell your unique story together. Ryan specializes in color tattoos as well as black and gray. He also practices a diverse range of styles, whether you're passionate about anime, fantasy, mythology, pop culture, video games, movies, the esoteric, nature, creatures, dot work, black work, or you have your own ideas. Ryan embraces your distinct vision with an unwavering commitment to passion, precision, and originality. Each project he undertakes is a labor of dedication, a fusion of research, artistic ingenuity, and profound symbolism. His commitment to authenticity is nothing short of remarkable, infusing his very soul into every creation. From half and full sleeves to bodysuits, awesome back pieces, to majestic front panels, Ryan is the artist for anyone seeking powerful, breathtaking artwork. With every stroke of his needle, he weaves a tale that's as unique as you are. Don't settle for ordinary tattoos when you can elevate your ink to the extraordinary with Ryan Allison. Embark on your creative journey by booking a consultation with him and proudly exhibit your story on your skin. Visit Ryan at Why Not Ink Studio in North Park Mall or check out his portfolio online at ryanallison.art. Ryan Allison Tattoos. When you choose me, you're not just getting a tattoo, you're getting an experience.
All right, welcome back. Let's dive into a couple franchise tags, Mark. This was an interesting note. I didn't realize until I saw Adam Schefter tweet it out. Only 2 players tagged. That's the fewest number of franchise tags since 1994. 8 players were tagged last year. And another item, worth noting is that Sam Darnold, who was, by some projected to possibly be a candidate for that franchise tag, was not tagged. But T. Higgins locked up for a year by Cincinnati, $26.2 million next year for him. and Trey Smith, the standout guard for the Kansas City Chiefs, will play under the tag as well, barring some sort of extension that gets reached in the interim. But yeah, your instant reaction to those two tags.
Well, Higgins got tagged last year. It gets the tag again.
Yeah.
I think that Cincinnati is going to, honestly, they've said it. They're going to try to work on a deal with Higgins. And I think if you're T, you're in a good spot. I don't get why T's frustrated, because you got all guaranteed last year. You're getting all guaranteed this year. Total combined, it's over $40 million in guaranteed money in 2 years. So I know you want to guarantee more for the next couple years, but even if T got injured this year, if T Higgins hit the market after an injury, as long as it wasn't something, like both your knees explode, he's still going to be a really valuable commodity
he's young enough
at this time next year. So if I'm T Higgins and his agent, I would look for 3-4 years. I'd want in that range of that kind of DJ Moore. I want basically like 75 million guaranteed, but maybe with incentives and all that, close to 100 million or whatever it might be. I know they're going to get the Jamar Chase deal done this year. If Cincy can pull it off, they had to let go of Alex Kappa, the guard. Bears should be in on that. Bears made a play for guard today, and we'll talk Bears.
Not a flashy move, but
it was I think a solid move. But I'm not angry from T Higgins. I know he's maybe frustrated. It's maybe easy for me to say that, but it's really, really a lot of money that a lot of guys aren't getting. $26.5 million fully guaranteed. So I think there's worse things to be frustrated about, and then try to negotiate the long-term deal. For Trey Smith, again, as a guard, you just locked up $20-something million. Officially the highest paid guard going into next year. Like that money, it's the highest money anyone's getting at guard. Again, that's fully guaranteed. That's if you're a guard, you're looking for like a 3-year, $30 million contract. You just got it all in 1 year, and you are a low drafted guy who just gets that in the bank account. I wouldn't, again, if I was Trey Smith, rush to be like pouty about not getting a long-term deal. You're in Kansas City with Mahomes, and you just got almost $30 million guaranteed.
Yeah,
I think he should definitely say to them, all right, you tagged me. I want big money. I want to reset the guard market. And I think Kansas City, after seeing what just happened to them in the Super Bowl, can say, you're absolutely right. You were one of the lone bright spots for us on that offensive line. We'll do whatever you say. And so I think he's got a lot of leverage. I think both of those guys should get and will get signed before the season starts to a long-term deal. As far as why it's a low number of franchise tags, I'll put it to you. I think my feeling is that teams realize and GMs realize in the long run, all it does is hurt your relationship with the player if that player is touchy. And so I think for a lot of teams, you also see so many coaching turnovers, and you also see so many, even though the cap's going up, I think you see a lot of teams go, listen, if you're not going to willing to just take a really good deal at a hometown rate as a guy we drafted, we're just going to go back to the draft. We're going to go back to the drawing board, and we're not going to be strangle-held by you. And also, I think Adam Schefter tweeted it, a lot of other people, it's a weak class. Like this free agent class right now is weak. It was weak before the tags. When you take T. Higgins and Trey Smith off the market, it's even weaker now. And that's also why I think you see teams like the Bears getting aggressive and just saying, screw it, we're going to go get a guy we like and give up a 6th-round pick because we don't love what we're seeing in the free agent market, especially after Trey Smith and T. Higgins are off the table.
Yeah, no, it's kind of one of those tug and pull type of fights that ownership plays with the player more often than not, where it is beneficial for the team in many regards to place the franchise tag, but the cons are becoming more and more clear for the team's sake.
Social media distractions.
So,
They go to the wine to their agent, and they whine to the media. They don't show up
and
to
this
camp.
money's not deferrable. This is
Yeah.
straight out of your cap. You know, if he's a good enough player to franchise tag, ideally he's a player that you would want to have around for a few years. And so, you know, if you're not able to work out a deal, it's kind of a last resort thing for a lot of teams. But it's kind of their way of bailing out and you know, ride it out one more year type of thing. But yeah, a lot of players don't like it for obvious reasons. But they are getting that money guaranteed and it's in their pocket now. There is something to be said for that.
If I was a team, really quickly, I would only use the franchise tag on a player who I was 100% certain would see it as, all right, well, it is what it is. I'm still going to put my work in and I'll see it OTAs. If I have any inkling at all, that player is going to turn into what we saw Ayuk and Debo and the drama of I'm not showing up, I'm holding out, and then I show up a week before the season starts. I'm not doing it. Like I'd rather let that player walk than deal with, I get that player, but what do you really get them for if they basically show up 1 week before the season starts and they've caused you nothing but drama all season, all off season? Mm-hmm. It's not worth it. It's not worth it.
No, yeah, and I'd be interested to see like some sort of study to go back and see, you know, how teams overall, team success fared when they franchise tagged a player, let alone franchise tagged a player who was upset about it. That would be interesting to see. The Cowboys restructured CeeDee Lamb's contract. That obviously just gives them a little bit more wiggle room this year. They have about middle of the road salary cap space. I don't know if this is updated with the CeeDee Lamb restructure, but right now it says they have 17 million in cap space.
Well, because they just re-signed the defensive tackle.
Yes. Osa Adigzawa. That's my guess.
I think it's Odigizua.
Adigizua. That
sounds
like that.
Right.
4-year, $80 million contract. Very big player. Contract. That surprised me. I didn't realize he was that good of a player.
Dude, Cowboys
but it's
pay the Cowboys,
dude.
Jerry pays his guys. And what's so funny is when you see the restructure,
and he might be an incredible player. I honestly just I haven't. And we're pretty dialed in. Like I don't feel like I've like heard enough about this guy.
I mean, I've heard him, but I can't. When I think of like top defensive tackles of the league, his name doesn't jump to the top of my mind.
Right.
But I will say this again: it's such a Cowboys move. They actually say, "Hey, we're going to free up some cap space," and then what do? They blow it all on their own guy. Like that's what the Cowboys do. I know that Dallas Mavericks fans are in a world of pain. They hate their lives right now, and Kyrie Irving just tore his ACL, and they just want to kill themselves. If they're also Cowboys fans, they may be in the running right now for like most blindsidedly frustrated sports fans over the last calendar year. Listen, as a Bears and a Chicago sports fan, I know my life's hell. My life's been hell for a long time. But your Mavs and your Cowboys a year ago were a 12-win playoff team and in the NBA Finals. And then the Cowboys have the crap season they have after signing Dak to the biggest contract for a quarterback ever.
The Texas Rangers have had quite a bit of success in recent years.
Well, they have,
well.
So maybe you can lean on that Rangers fans as baseball season starting. But like it's a mess for the Cowboys right now, I think. And I just don't see what the Cowboys, what else they can do, especially if you're telling me, if you're true about that, like they got $17 million to spend. They have a lot of holes, Dan, a lot of holes.
They do. And speaking of the Cowboys, Jimmy Johnson officially retiring from the Fox panel, where his pre-Super Bowl, they did like a AI generated retirement video for him. And it was like, so the AI was actually really good. I was kind of surprised, but the presentation itself was very cheesy. It was about him, like an AI version of him walking through life, like as a young boy and then a football player at Alabama and then a coach.
So maybe they knew this was coming.
Super Bowls. But that was the weird part is like, they couldn't actually just say he was retiring because he hadn't made the announcement. So it was like, I was like, what is this homage they're paying to the guy? I mean, clearly he must be retiring something. Anyway, it is official. he is retiring, and just wanted to note that because obviously he's been a part of that Fox broadcast since the mid 90s when they formed. I mean, they were showing
They
clips
started
of
in 95.
Terry, Howie, and Jimmy have been
There from the
together
beginning.
in that grouping for, I mean, Jimmy came
For
out. I don't think he
31
was,
years, 30
maybe he
years.
wasn't there right at the start. I
No,
don't
they
think he
were
was
all
there.
three of them.
What?
It was
Okay, he
Terry.
was.
There's that video going viral again, and they showed
Yeah.
it. Terry saying, "Here's day one," and he brings it to the desk, and there's Howie and Jimmy.
Yeah.
And Jimmy
yeah.
had just
So
got done coaching. Jimmy had just
that's
left.
why I was like, maybe he wasn't there right at the start because he was coaching still. But yeah, no, it was right when he retired. But that's pretty epic, man, to have a NFL game day crew that has stayed the same for 30 years. Not to mention one of those guys is Terry Bradshaw, who says stuff that you don't know what
Terry
he's
needs to
say.
go. Terry
He
needs
does.
this. They'd be smart if they announced before the season this is Terry's last season, and then they did like a Jimmy doesn't need a retirement tour, but like a year-long Terry goodbye tour, I think would be appropriate and great. He was Charles Barkley, kind of him and Charles at the same time, kind of being the guys for their sports. But yeah, Terry's at the point now where it's like Lee Corso, where it's like, God, this is just painful. Like it's
just kind of sad. Yeah.
And he's had real health scares. I'll say this: Howie can stay another 5-10 years. Howie's
incredible,
solid.
man. He's awesome.
He's younger than Terry and Jimmy, so he's got that going for him.
Sure, yeah.
But I want to credit really quickly Sylvie from Waddle and Sylvie. I saw it from him first. I retweeted it. I think it's a brilliant idea. Now is the time to make the big announcement. Tom Brady takes Jimmy Johnson's spot. You get Brady out of the booth. He did a Super Bowl. He did it. Put him as your lead guy on the desk. Reshape the desk with Tom at the desk and put Greg back where he belongs as the best analyst in the booths that we have right now.
Yeah, but do you think Fox is going to pay a guy hundreds of millions of dollars to be a part of a panel? I don't know.
Yes, because they'll still use him in other ways. Tom is on the herd every week. Tom does social stuff. Tom does YouTube stuff for them. He does they could really use him then as like doing pieces, doing interviews, doing more of that stuff because he's not a game day analyst anymore. So he's skirting a lot more of the Fox.
But the interviews he may run into issues with being a part owner too.
But Fox is getting a lot of shit for like there's this guy broadcasting and he's an owner. I think if he's just at the desk, it's a lot less shit he's taking.
Oh yeah,
Fox is
I agree. And Greg Olson's just so good that he deserves to be the number one guy on a network.
He's better than Romo. He's better than Aikman.
Yeah,
Aikman in his prime was fantastic, but Aikman's a little older now. But Greg is phenomenal. Greg is absolutely phenomenal. And Brady, I think, would be better at the desk goofing around for 2 hours with Howie and the guys than he is in the booth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's a real possibility. I would love to see it. And I want to see Greg Olson get back to that main spot because he deserves it too.
Shout out to Sylvie. He was the one who I saw it first. Maybe other people had to take two, but I saw it from him first.
All right, let's look at some of these draft prospects and what comps you have for them. Yeah. I'm interested to see this list that you put together and kind of how you break it down. Are you starting with Cam Ward or I don't know what
I'll say this.
You want to go.
I don't think this will take a ton of time. Again, I want to get these names into our viewers, our listeners' mouths. And for us, I think it's just good to kind of talk about because we haven't really talked about these quarterbacks. We both are college football fans. We both know a lot of the top guys, but again, it's just that now it's for real, right? We got to start knowing it. We got to start making proclamations about who we would take and who we wouldn't. I am going to start with Cam Ward, and I think going and watching, and everyone should do this. Go watch the 20-minute highlight of like Cam Ward at his best on YouTube, and go watch because people do it too, like 20 minutes of Cam Ward sucking. And I watch both for all these guys. And what I take away from Cam Ward is he feels a lot like what we got from Michael Penix Jr. in the sense that this is a guy, Michael Penix had the injuries. Cam Ward just started at a nowhere college and then grew and grew and grew and kept moving up. Cam Ward had 57 starts in college. This is a guy who has the record for Division I touchdown passes and 158 touchdown passes. So this is a guy that from every level of D1 college, from no-name D1 college to big-time Miami maybe making a bowl game and maybe making the playoff and leading Miami, was phenomenal this year. He also at 6'2", 223, big enough, strong enough, and he's got a really lively arm. When I watch Cam Ward, to me, the first thing that came to my mind was like Jordan Love-esque. So he's kind of like, think Jordan Love. Mobile, but not Lamar Jackson. Kind of an awkward arm delivery like Jordan Love. He's not like yoked, but he's strong enough to make all the throws. But like Jordan Love, will be risky. Like Cam Ward is going to put the ball on a rope over the middle, and there's times you're going to be like, dude, and then there's times you're going to be like, holy fuck, what was that? So Cam Ward, from Incarnate Word to Washington State to Miami, my questions are, does he have the cannon? He does. This is not Josh Allen arm. My other questions would be, what was his real competition the 1 year at Miami? Half a game against Iowa State in a bowl game, and then Florida week 1. The rest of that ACC schedule, it's a lot of cupcakes. Now, he put up numbies, but it's a lot of cupcakes. He is the one guy I would say has, to me, the potential, the ceiling to be like, if you're taking in the top 10, you're taking a guy who's a little bit of a project, but I would feel confident saying day one can go out there and play at the NFL level. I would not touch him if I'm a defensive coach. If I was an offensive guy and I had an offensive staff and I wanted a little bit of a project, he's the guy I'd be willing to take number one. And do you have any quick thoughts on Cam Ward?
No, I mean, I think the Jordan Love comparison makes a lot of sense. I could see some Jalen Hurts there too, in the way that he's stronger. Like he looks like he can withstand hits at the NFL level, in my opinion.
I said he's also kind of Kyler Murray-esque. Like he's a little bigger Kyler Murray, the way he kind of moves. Yeah. Like he's accurate.
Yeah, he's got shiftiness for sure.
He's not Tua. He's not slight like Jane Daniels. I agree with that.
Yeah. So that was kind of my thoughts on there. But I think we both agree in a weak quarterback class, he's the number one quarterback.
Yeah, right now a lot can change. But from the quick, again, good and bad highlights, plus kind of all we know about him already, I feel comfortable saying I would take him in the top 10 if I was an offensive coach who needed a quarterback. I think he could have a really nice NFL career. I don't know. Again, I'm not going to project 10 years from now, but yeah, it's not a dumb move. So let's go to Shedeur. Let me start with the good. 50 college starts, was successful at putting up numbers at the historically black colleges, and then was successful and put up numbers in Division I football. A lot of starts. He did not play at Alabama or Ohio State. They did not recruit well at Colorado. Yes, he had Travis Hunter, but he had the most sacks in college football. And it's not because he is like, I hold on to the ball too long. It's because the dude had a terrible offensive line. So he's not like a Caleb Williams or Trevor Lawrence who's coming into the league like with all of this, like, I've never been touched and I don't know what losing's like. So I think there's a lot of good in that way with Shedeur. He's battle tested. He's seen it all. He's played lower college. He's played high-level college. He's 23. He's older. He's slight of frame at 6'2", 215. It feels a little bit more like 6'1.5", 212. He's 74% completion percentage, extremely accurate. My NFL comp is older Mike Vick. When Mike Vick was with the Eagles and was less mobile and could make all the throws and had really worked on his accuracy, when you watch Shedeur, he's not young Michael Vick. He's not a runner.
Not even close.
He's not a runner. But the body type is Michael Vick-esque. Movement in the pocket is Michael Vick-esque. When Michael was older, he can scramble for 10 yards like when Michael was older. And when it's certainly way more accurate than when Michael was young in his career. So that's the only thing that it really felt like when I watched him. I'm like, this looks like old Vic. I'll say this. I also like that he comes from someone, and Coach Pat Shurmur was his offensive coordinator the last 2 years, who just ran NFL stuff. So he's his dad who's talked to him NFL stuff.
True.
And he had an NFL offensive coordinator the last 2 years. So there's a lot of those positives. Listen, if you're the Jets or you're a defensive coach, like I think that he'll be a burnout. He won't. I don't think he can go like Caleb Williams went to a defensive culture with a defensive coach. And I think he'd have a way worse rookie season than what we saw Caleb Williams in that scenario. Now, if he ends up like Bo Nix with an offensive coach in a system that's going to really be with him, if he's with Daboll, if he's with Stefanski in Cleveland, if he goes to Indianapolis, then I think, listen, this guy can play. He's really accurate. He can make throws. He can't make all the throws. He doesn't have a cannon, but I think he's worthy of a first-round pick in the right situation. If you are the Jets and you're like, oh, we're going to go get Shedeur Sanders, he's going to save us, you're in trouble. And Shedeur's in trouble. And I don't think it's fair for him to be in that situation.
Yeah, no, not much to say on that. I think if I were like, he's obviously not as dynamic as Vic, even older Vic. Vic had an absolute cannon.
Yes,
I think, and at risk of sounding offensive to Shedeur, I do think, and you could see it in the thumbnail of this video, and I've seen others comp him to this. I think Kenny Pickett is a fairly decent comp. I think he's a better version of that, but I think that's a decent comp.
Kenny
not
Pickett,
small,
sure.
not big. Yeah. Mobile enough, but not remotely a mobile quarterback that you would say is going to be scrambling and extending plays very often. Anticipates decently well, but doesn't have the big arm that wows you. I think there's a lot of that compares.
I think ceiling is kind of CJ Stroud, where it's like he doesn't have as good of an arm and he's not as big, but really accurate and not mobile, but you kind of in your head it's like, oh, well, he can scramble for 10 yards pretty well and mobile in the pocket.
Get it done.
People need to get out of their head prime time and Dion.
Yeah, that's
Shedeur
not what you're getting
is
here.
not that. He's just not. Okay. So those are the two that I would be willing to take in the first round. In the right scenario. They're not like take them no matter what first rounders.
Sure.
I'm going to go to Jalen Milroe next. And I'll say this about Jalen Milroe. The obvious comp is Jalen Hurts. What I think you need to look at with Jalen Milroe is not just last year. Look at Jalen Milroe with Nick Saban. Let me read you some things. He's 6'2", 225, but he's thick as hell. And he looks like Jalen Hurts. Like he just physically looks like Jalen Hurts.
Yeah.
This year, he had 20 rushing touchdowns, only 16 passing touchdowns. Last year was Saban, so 2023, 23 passing touchdowns, 12 rushing touchdowns. So in the newer system, in the new coaching staff, they basically said, we're going to run the hell out of Jalen Milroe because they wanted to win games. And I think Jalen Milroe accommodated that. He's not Anthony Richardson, okay? He's not. He's Jalen Hurts. If Jalen Hurts was a second-round pick, I think that's where Jalen Milroe falls. When you get Jalen Milroe, what you're not getting that you got with Jalen Hurts is I think Jalen Hurts had a way more lively arm and a little bit more accuracy. But if you're looking for a dude in the modern NFL who can take a 17-game schedule, who you can be creative running the football with, and yet be more gifted as a thrower than Anthony Richardson. He's also not Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson had 1 year in the SEC. This student's had 2 years in the SEC, and he was really, really coached by Kalen DeBoer and Dick Saban with two really, really great coaches and in two really, really tough schedules and played in big, big games. Anthony Richardson had none of that. Anthony Richardson was all just upside. There's more to Jalen Milroe than upside. And I'll end on this. He had a 3.52 and he won I wrote it down here. It's called the William Campbell Trophy. It's known as the academic Heisman. He's not just some dumb dude who went to Alabama. I believe he's graduating with a master's degree. He is a smart kid. So like Jalen Hurts, you're getting like high intelligence, high work ethic, high character. It's on this coaching staff that drafts him to mold and to shape him and to build something around him. And if you do that, you could absolutely have Jalen Hurts 2.0 with Jalen Milroe. But again, if he ends up in Pittsburgh,
yeah,
I don't know.
Yep. I mean, I would be happy with them taking a flyer on him at some point because I'm all about just throwing darts at the dartboard, stealing with sticks. But yeah, no issues with that comp at all.
He is the highest ceiling guy. So when I'm ranking these, I have Cam Ward is 1, Shedeur is 1A, and then I don't have a 3. I have what I call categories. Highest ceiling, if you're looking for the highest ceiling, it's Jalen Milroe. Because I really do think if he's a raw talent that if you like we've seen with Jalen Hurts, sky's the limit. So the next person next category I'm going to talk about is I call the pro type. So these are the pro type guys, and that's Kyle McCord, former Ohio State, then went to Syracuse. Only 26 starts, so 2 years of big-time football, 6'3", 224. This dude had minus 65 rushing yards in 2024. So he's a pro type. He is Jared Goff. He is Sam Darnold. Big, make all the throws. But again, you're talking about a pro-style quarterback. 58 touchdowns, 18 interceptions total at Ohio State and Syracuse. There's one really, really ugly game. Against Pitt this year, he threw 5 interceptions. It's ugly. It's bad. And I'll say this. Kyle McCord has this negative going for him. Against good teams, Miami, number 6 in the country, UNLV, number 25 in the country, and number 23, Georgia Tech. He had only 10 touchdowns, only 1 interception. And so it's hard to say, listen, is all those numbers you put up against the best teams, while you didn't turn it over, you didn't exactly light it up either. So Kyle McCord is a third-round guy. If you have an already mobile quarterback system, like if you are getting Sam Darnold, if you're Vegas, go get Kyle McCord. If you are the Lions and you want to stick with Jared Goff, go get Kyle McCord. If you are the New England Patriots with Drake May, maybe go take a flyer on Kyle McCord in the 4th round as a guy that's, again, this is my prototype. This is a guy to go with it. High ceiling. The other person being Will Howard. I put Kyle McCord slightly above Will Howard because Will Howard's pro day was, the combine was awful. Did you see the tape?
No, I didn't see the tape. No, I need to go check it out.
Look up the Will Howard
queue it up on my
combine.
YouTube now, so
it's ugly. It's ugly. He was not good. But again,
I was thinking Will Howard kind of reminded me of Mac Jones, to be honest.
So Will Howard listen, Kyle McCord and Will Howard are both Mac Jones-esque, right?
Yeah.
So with Will Howard, you get 6'4", a little bit bigger, 235. He is the big, strong guy.
Yeah.
He looks the most like Jared Goff as far as the tape. Big enough, strong enough, mobile enough. Question is, there's nothing that I look at with Will Howard that I go, holy shit, that's special, right? Like it's big enough, strong enough, mobile enough. 43 starts, he's 23, right situation, develop into a starter. Again, if I'm trying to think, if I'm Miami, I'm taking a flyer on Will Howard in the 3rd round, right? Because with that system, if I'm San Francisco, I'm taking a flyer on Will Howard. Yeah, look at this. It's ugly. So that's a completed pass. It gets ugly here. And again, he threw to Dan. He had NFL wide receivers everywhere. He had NFL wide receivers everywhere to Ohio State.
Do you think they're only going to show the good ones in this video just to pump him up?
I saw wait, just wait out. I saw a couple throws. It's the highlights of it's bad. There was bad moments. This might be the only good throws. Wait, just wait it out here. We're only at an hour. We can say screw it. Okay, a little high. Not great. Where's the bad? There's ones that are way bad misses. This might be just only the good ones.
Yeah, see, they're only going to show. There's only 20 seconds left.
We don't have to, but go. Trust me on it. Trust me on it. Trust me on it. It's not good. All right.
I believe you.
So okay. So we move on from that. The next, so that's your highest ceiling Jalen Milroe, pro-typed Howard and McCord. I'm not saying they're my 3rd, my 4th, and 5th best QBs. Is this it? Yeah. Oh, that's bad.
They're showing some pretty crazy ones here. Yeah.
Okay. He is big. He is strong. Yeah, that's ugly.
Rough.
Yeah, it's bad.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the next category I have is called spot starter. So this is the person who you say to yourself, if you're looking for a guy in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round, Miami, other teams maybe injury, you're worried about injury, where you're dude, I need a guy who's the next, just you throw him in there and he can get me 2 or 3 wins on a season out of the 4 starts he plays. It's Quinn Ewers. He's small. When you watch the tape on Quinn Ewers, 6'2", 210, he doesn't look 6'2", 210. I bet he's more 6'1", 200. He has a ton of starts. He's 36. He missed 7 games in 3 years. He is not a runner. He's mobile in the pocket, but minus 82 yards rushing in 2024. He's Jimmy G. He's Kirk Cousins. He's Brock Purdy. He is, and when I say Brock Purdy, with Brock Purdy, if Quinn Ewers ended up in Miami or in San Francisco, I think Quinn Ewers could put up the numbers those guys maybe put up. But again, is he going to last the whole season? Is he going to take the hits? But again, you see it there. There's not a lot of zip on the ball. It's accurate, but it looks a lot like Brock Purdy. Undersized. It has to be really precise. It's not going to rip the wide receiver's hand off. It's Jimmy G. It's Brock Purdy. That's Quinn Ewers. Finally, the other guy that I think is worthy of getting drafted, and we're talking about a lot getting drafted, 2 guys that I think are projects, but on the opposite ends, right? So you have the highest ceiling in Jalen Miller. You have the prototype in Howard and McCord. You have the spot starter. He can play in the NFL, but he's a spot starter at best. Maybe develops into who is Mullet. He was with the Raiders last year. He was with the Jaguars.
Gardner Minshew? Or is that
Quinn Ewers could be Gardner Minshew, right? He could have a moment where in 5 years from now, you're Quinn Ewers is going to start our season for us, but he's not the guy, but he can start. That could be Quinn Ewers.
Yeah.
But this guy's projects who I think high ceilings, not as high as Jalen Milroe. If they're your day one starter, I think you're in real trouble. Riley Leonard is the mobile project, right? 6'3", really skinny, extraordinarily mobile. Daniel Jones is the only thing that I can really compare him to in the NFL because it's not a good enough passer right now, but definitely good enough mobile. He needs to put on 20 pounds to be successful in the NFL. He's a great runner. Is his arm NFL? I don't know. But I'd draft him in the 4th, 5th, 6th round. If I was the Bills, if I was the Chiefs, if I had a stable quarterback situation, but I was an offensive coach who wanted a fun project, Riley Leonard's a fun project. And he could start games for you and maybe develop into something that's really a trade asset in a year or two from now. And then Jackson Dart. So Jackson Dart, I could see getting drafted in the 2nd round. He might be.
Yeah, he's an interesting one.
So he might be, besides Jalen Milroe, the guy you'd take in the 2nd round. My NFL comp, though, is Zach Wilson. So when you watch the tape, it's Zach Wilson. He's thick enough at 225. He's 6'2", but looks oddly 6'1". A lot of these guys, I think, are listed 6'2", but are like kind of 6'1". He's really young. So at 21 years old, he's really young. But Dan, this kid has got all the tools.
He's made some incredible throws,
dude,
like,
and
in a vacuum.
That's why it's Zach Wilson. When you watch his high of highs, it's Zach Wilson. It's moving to his right, and it's 65 yards on a rope. And you're like, holy shit, that was crazy. Look at the arm angle there. It looks like he's cocky, he's young, he's strong, he's thick. This is Zach Wilson. And again, if Zach Wilson ended up with Sean Payton, Zach Wilson's, from day one, maybe still a starter in this league. We have more tape on him. He played against better competition than Zach Wilson. I wouldn't take him in round 1, but I would take him in round 2. And I would pray to God, if I was a team like Miami, if I was a team like Dallas, if I was a team like maybe not New York, he needs to sit. He needs to not have, he can't be your starter day 1. So maybe wherever Aaron Rodgers end up, take this kid because he's got he's got the upside. He's got a sick name, Jackson Dart. But Dan, listen to this. Listen to this. 32 total touchdowns, okay? 32 total touchdowns. 29 passing, 3 rushing. In 5 games against the he only played 5 games non-SEC. So 32 total touchdowns, right?
Yep.
13 touchdowns came against the SEC. So 19 of his 32 touchdowns were in the 5 games against non-SEC.
Sure.
So in the majority of his games, which were against the SEC, only 13 total touchdowns. And Dan, 6 of those 13 were in 1 game against Arkansas. So if you look at his box scores this year, his senior year against the SEC, most games it's 1 touchdown if he's lucky. A lot of no touchdown games. So Jackson Dart played against tough competition. Against the tough competition, he was very average. Against Arkansas and non-SEC teams, he stacked up 25 of his 32 total touchdowns. Think about that.
Yeah.
So only 7 touchdowns, really, in when you think about it, against the top-end SEC teams, which he played against. So high upside, really fun, really explosive. If I sign Aaron Rodgers, I'm drafting Jackson Dart. If I am not sold on my quarterback, I'm drafting Jackson Dart. If I have a quarterback who Jackson Dart can sit behind, Miami, and wherever Aaron Rodgers ends up.
Yeah. No, I think that's
he's
a pretty
the last
accurate
person I want to talk about because
where he'll go.
He's the biggest wild card. In 3 years from now, we could be talking about Jackson Dart is a stud. Or we could be talking about him like we talk about Zach Wilson, where it's like he's a non-factor.
Or Bo Nix, we'll see. And the story's still being written on Bo Nix, of course. But Yeah. No, that's cool. Was he the final one on your list?
Listen, there's a
Yeah.
couple other names. Cam Miller, North Dakota State. He's kind of Spencer Rattler. North Dakota State, 6'1", 212, really small, but impressive. Really small, but impressive. Maybe his upside is he is a late round Brock Purdy guy. North Dakota State is a powerhouse. Dylan Gabriel, Oregon, too small, 5'11", 202. He looks like Bryce Young. If you are, speaking of which, again, if you're Carolina, you maybe take a flyer on a Will Howard, a Jackson Dart. You have an offensive coach, right? You maybe take a flyer on it. But Dylan Gabriel's tiny. But again, a lot of experience, a solid player. Maybe he could become a career backup for the right team. And then Tyler Shaw of Louisville.
Yeah, no, he's an interesting one.
He's Joe Flacco-esque, 6'5", 225, just a cannon, but bad stats and not otherwise impressive. But again, raw talent. Brady Cook at Mizzou, mobile, Big Ten. If I'm Josh Allen, if I'm the Bills or really, really solid team in the 5th, 6th, 7th round, he's a name to be like, again, the measurables are there. If I want a project who with the right size and mobility, and I have a mobile quarterback, he's a name to look at.
I like it. Got a little taste there of the draft quarterbacks coming up here, and a lot. Mark and I were talking before the show here. A lot could change and will be determined based on what teams do in free agency. And that will determine, what needs those teams have, of course, going into the draft, but also kind of where those positions stack up in the pecking order of the NFL draft itself. Because if one of these teams gets, grabs Sam Darnold, then, okay, well, they're probably not drafting a first-round quarterback, or at least they're not drafting a quarterback with a top 10 pick. So, yeah, there's going to be a lot of things that move and flow, but this is a good introduction into the actual prospects themselves.
There are quarterback needy teams, right? We know Cleveland. We know the Giants.
Vegas.
We know that Vegas, right? We know that the Jets. Like, there are 4 really quarterback needy teams. I would not advise those teams to take more than Ward and Shedeur in round 1. And I would be aggressive in round 2 for Milroe and Dart if I was an offensive coach in an offensive culture and I wanted to get really funky and creative, especially with Milroe as a day 1 starter, Dart as a really fun development project backup. 3rd round on, it's fair game. Like, take what you want, play around with it.
Yeah, that's experimental.
I'd be shocked if anyone was a day 1 starter not named Milroe, Ward, or Sanders. I'd be shocked. I'd say a lot went wrong for that team if your day 1 starter is Leonard, Howard.
I might even be surprised if Milroe's a day 1 starter, to be honest. I guess there's maybe a couple instances. I guess if he ends up in like Vegas, he very well may start.
I think he could shock the world and start day 1 in that system with Chip Kelly. I think he'd be a fun, interesting early in the 2nd round. Vegas could be fun and interesting.
It's true. That would be an interesting fit. Yeah. Good stuff, man. Well, this was a great show to bounce back from the little break there. So really excited we got to do that. Of course, a lot of news is going to start trickling in as we approach the new league year.
I want that Steelers quarterback news for next show. I want that Steelers quarterback news.
The latest report is that they are very much looking to get this locked up by the end of the week. So,
and I'm seeing leaning Fields.
Yeah, and that's what I hope. I hope they go with Fields. He at least gives you upside. The team needs weapons. He is one. He went 4-2, was playing well. Way better red zone efficiency under him, despite the boost that they got in the passing game from Russell Wilson afterwards. They still fared way better in the red zone with Fields. So, yeah, I just think the Russell Wilson experiment, ran its course. We didn't get the outcome we were looking for. You got to move on. maybe you can still unlock something out of Fields. You can't still unlock something out of Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
So.
And then if I was Vegas, I would grab Russell Wilson and I would draft Jalen Miller in the second round. And then, you might
that's
have
not a bad move.
Then
Not
you
a
might
bad
have
move,
something really fun.
Yeah. Lot of potential here and a lot of variance for what these teams can choose over the next few weeks heading into free agency and, of course, the draft. We will, of course, be bringing you all of that news as it comes through every week leading up into the draft and, of course, all throughout the offseason training camp and then, into the preseason and regular season we go. But that's a long way away. We've got a lot more to touch on before then. We appreciate you all tuning in. We are a part of the For Frequency's Sake podcast network, so go check out all of those great shows, including For Fantasy's Sake QC. You can check out forfantasysakeqc.com for all of the other shows, and we will see you back here next week.
This has been a For Frequency's Sake podcast network production. For more great content, subscribe to For Frequency's Sake on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter.